You are listening to The Players Lounge with your host, Alex Ramirez, on the Pro 10 Radio Network, a production of Pro 10 Global Sports. Enjoy the show.
Good evening and welcome to the Players Lounge presented by Pro 10 Global Sports and Pro 10 International. Today is Thursday, May 22nd. I am your host, Alex Ramirez. With me today is ATP WTA journalist and writer for his own blog, tennisacumen.com, Pete Zebron. Pete, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, Alex. Thanks again for having me on the show. Looking forward to tonight's show and guest.
Absolutely, me too. Want to remind everybody that you can call the show at area code 347-637-1197. You can also reach us on Twitter at Pro10 Radio, and you can check pro10radio.com for all the podcasts and future show information. I want to take this time to thank all of our new partners, the Ball Magnet, Sports Mouse at sportsmouse.net, the Tennis Congress, and Cruise Control Gear. We have also started a campaign to support the orphans at the Elora Academy in Africa that serve the less fortunate children across the slums of Kisumu City and Western Kenya. Please check the pro10radio.com website and click on the donate button on the front page of the website. It's a great cause to get involved with. If you want to know more about the many products and services that we feature here on the show, you may want to tune in on Friday, May 30th at 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to have representatives from the many different companies telling us about their products and services. Our goal here at Pro 10 Radio Network is to support the tennis industry and the many people out there working to make your tennis experience a much better one. Pro10radio.com is a not-for-profit organization. We don't charge anything for the companies that we support to advertise on here. We only ask for a small donation of any kind. All donations help to pay for the expenses, and the majority of the donations go to support the Pro 10 Foundation and Scholarship Fund. Pretty soon we're going to be doing a show about the foundation, our mission, and how Pro 10 International and Pro 10 Global Sports support the mission. If you have a product or service that you would like to feature on the show, send us an email to radio@pro10radio.com. And Pete, I'm excited tonight. We have a legend on the show. I'm so excited to have him on here. Our special guest this evening was coached by Pancho Gonzalez as a young player. He attended the University of Southern California and won the NCAA championships. He and his partner Bill Bond captured the NCAA doubles title in 1964. He was the highest-ranked American player at the end of 3 consecutive years in the 1960s. And with his career high in singles number 3 in 1963, he reached the finals at Wimbledon in 1966. He was a member of the Handsome Eight, the initial 8 players signed by the Professional World Championship Tennis Tour. He won 27 doubles titles and 27 doubles and singles titles, including 5 Grand Slam doubles crowns. Dennis Ralston, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Hi, Alex. Nice to be on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And Dennis, we're going to start off. We always like to look back, and the first question right off the bat is, can you tell us a little bit about when you were young, how you started tennis and what made you love it?
Well, Alex, I grew up in California, in Bakersfield, California, which is in Central California, and my mom and dad both played, and I have an older sister that played, so it was kind of like a family thing. We started at public parks, Jastrow Park, that's still there in Bakersfield to this day, and so my mom and dad were very good players. My dad beat Bobby Riggs in high school tennis in L.A. He went to Glendale Hoover, and Riggs went to, Burbank High or some other one. So my dad was a really good player, and my mom was the number 1 player in Nevada in the 40s. Of course, there weren't too many players in Nevada in those days, but she was a very, very good player. And so it was just kind of a family thing that I got involved in. As a youngster, I started playing when I was 5, and kept going, and had a lot of help from the community in Bakersfield and the racket club, which developed after enough players decided they didn't want to play at the public parks. And So it was just sort of like I was kind of started in the crib watching them play, and then I wanted to get out there, and then people helped me. My parents basically taught me, and I started to do okay in the juniors in Southern California, and then they saw that I might have some potential, and they invited me down to L.A., and I met Pancho Gonzalez and Pancho Segura, and got to play at the L.A. Tennis Club, and with all the great players, and so it's sort of like, it was just, I just evolved, and I had a lot of help from a lot of people.
That's. Thank you very much for sharing that info, Dennis. And with respect to that, if you could elaborate a little bit on a couple of things. What junior titles or tournaments stick out in your mind as special memories in your junior career, and maybe early on, being able to meet and speak with Pancho Gonzalez, and how that evolved with respect to having him coach you as well.
Well, I was the ball boy for Pancho when the Pro Tour in the 50s came. They used to play 100 matches throughout the U.S., and they came to Bakersfield, and I saw Pancho play Lou Hode, and I was a ball boy, and I'll tell you what, that was the most unbelievable tennis I'd ever seen, and so, he was sort of my idol. I mean, he was the number one player in the world, and I thought, what an opportunity to meet him, let alone have him take an interest in me. And in the juniors, I played Kalamazoo in the 15 and unders in those days, and it was a clay court then. It wasn't hard, so we'd never played on clay, and so I had some adjusting to do. I had to learn to play on clay, and the first year I went back to the Midwest. I played in Champaign and Louisville and tournaments prior to the Zoo, and then I got to Kalamazoo, and I got to the finals of the 15 and unders and lost to a friend of mine, Bill Bond from La Jolla, who beat me in the finals, but we won the doubles. And the next year I went back to play in the 18 and unders, and I had figured out how I should play on clay, and somehow I won the 18 and unders when I was 16, and so that pretty much gave me a pretty big start in the game, and I got into a lot of tournaments that were for adults and the men's and stuff, and pretty much launched me on my career. The real launch was when I went to Wimbledon when I was 17 and played with Rafael Osuna from Mexico, and we were unseeded and unheard of, and the only team from locker room B ever to win at Wimbledon, and somehow we managed to win, and no one gave us much chance, but we beat a lot of good teams, and that really put me onto the big leagues as far as tennis world. I mean, people thought that I might be pretty good.
That's fantastic. Wow, 17-year-old and Wimbledon doubles championship for you. That's fantastic. And back in the day, Dennis, it was a little bit different with respect to people going and playing college tennis and then deciding whether or not to turn pro. Can you elaborate a bit on your decision to go to college, to turn pro, and your whole thought process with respect to that?
Certainly. Well, when I was growing up, there weren't too many professionals. The game was basically amateur, and there was a lot of money under the table for the top amateurs. But I always wanted to be, to play against the best players. But I knew that I had to develop, and so I really think I developed it when I went to USC and played there for George Tolley, and we couldn't play as a freshman, so I just played a lot of tournaments. But my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I mean, we had we had maybe one of the best teams ever in college. My junior year with Rafael Osuna and Bill Bond and Ramsey Earnhardt and Tom Edelson, and it was a great training ground. We practiced at the LA Tennis Club, and so in those days, there were very few people turning pro. I mean, you had to be a Wimbledon winner or a finalist or somebody that the tour was interested in, like Jack Kramer, and he was running the tour, and so I really didn't think that I'd ever play as the top pro, but that was what I wanted to do. And so in 1966, when I got to the finals of Wimbledon, I just figured that, that I was getting an offer from the Pro Tour, and I just wanted to play against the best. So I signed a contract and ended up playing my first pro matches with Pancho as my partner. It was a USA versus Australia. We played, Gonzalez and I played Laver, Rosewall, and Stolle, a tour through New Zealand and Australia. So, to me, that was the cat's meow, being with Pancho, playing against the best Australians. And, of course, I never thought that would ever happen as a youngster and even in college. But I just, I sort of kind of lucked into it, I guess.
Yes. Thank you for that. Dennis, I heard a story. I think you did an interview before. You had talked about your choice choosing USC, but you first wanted to go to UCLA. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I almost went to UCLA. Growing up in Bakersfield, we had a former Bruin that played at the Racket Club, and to be absolutely honest, I went down to watch a practice at UCLA, and I just couldn't deal with the way, and he was a great coach, but I knew it wouldn't work for me, J.D. Morgan, and he had Alan Fox and Larry Nagler, and J.D. had a lot of great teams, but I didn't like anybody yelling at me, and so that basically killed me from going to UCLA. I ended up going to USC because George Tolley was low-key and not high pressure, and plus Osuna and I had won Wimbledon when I was still in high school, and so it was sort of like an automatic that I do better when somebody doesn't yell at me, and some people function better like a Bobby Knight coach, but that kind of coach wouldn't have worked for me.
Yeah, Dennis, we're going to talk quite a bit about your doubles partnerships and your titles as well as some of your opponents. But, getting all the way to the final in 1966 at Wimbledon, can you take us through your recollections of your run to the final that year?
Yeah, I remember that one pretty well. I think you tend to remember the ones that you get close to. And I think probably at that stage, I'd beaten Cliff Drysdale in the semis, 10-8 in the fifth, and I was playing well, and I had a day off, and so I played a player that I'd beaten 4-4 2 weeks earlier, Manolo Santana of Spain. He's a very fine player. I thought I was going to win, but I went out there kind of thinking like, I'm in the finals, and that's pretty cool. But I didn't have anybody. I didn't have a coach, and I didn't have anybody kicking me in the rear and saying, "Okay, you're partway there, but you got to finish the deal." And so I played kind of a blasé match in my mind, and not to take anything away from Santana, he played well, but I'd love to go back and replay that one, but you can't do that. So I learned from it, and it helped me become a better coach. When I was coaching Roscoe Tanner, when he played Borg in the Wimbledon final, that was the first NBC breakfast at Wimbledon. I told Roscoe, I said, "You're not going to do what I did. You're not going to go out there and just kind of waltz through it. You're going to go out and win this thing." And Tanner played a great match, and he was so close to winning that. And so I think that helped in that sense. But, getting to the final of Wimbledon is okay, but you always think about what if. And, it bothers me that I didn't complete the deal. And I actually, believe it or not, took the runner-up trophy and threw it in the Thames. And so I wasn't real pleased with the fact that I won, that I lost in the finals.
Well, losing in the finals is a lot more than any of us have done. We'd like to even just get to Wimbledon, but it definitely was a good accomplishment. And I like the fact that you said that you learned from that loss, and a lot of these players these days, that's important for them to know that the losses, you learn a lot more from those losses than you do the wins. So thank you for sharing that, Dennis. You talked about partnering up with Rafael Osuna. You won at 17 years old. the doubles title in 1960. Then, along with a new partner, Chuck McKinley, you faced Osuna in 3 consecutive U.S. Championship doubles finals, winning 2 of them. In fact, you and Chuck McKinley won 3 of the 4 U.S. Championships in doubles. What clicked with you and Chuck in New York?
Well, we played the national doubles in those years in Boston, and Chuck was the Wimbledon champion in 1963, winning Wimbledon without losing a set, and he was a heck of a player. And he was the number 1 American at the time, and I was maybe 2 or 3 or whatever, and we just kind of meshed. We were a good team, and we played Davis Cup and all through the campaign in '63, where we ended up winning against Australia, and he was sort of like he was an amazing athlete. He could do everything. He was only 5'8" and should have been a fullback in football, but he loved tennis, and we just meshed. I mean, he knew where I was going to go, I knew where he was going to go. Osuna and I were like that too, and but it was interesting playing Rafael when he played for Mexico, and there's a lot of pressure, and playing against him. My roommate at USC, and I'm sure he felt the same thing. But we had some tremendous battles and great matches, and fortunately we won most of them.
Yeah, Dennis, and you mentioned '63, and you appeared on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 1963, and I was wondering if a big deal was made about that back then.
Well, I think, again, when you're young, you kind of, you don't really know, what's going on. Like, I mean, Sports Illustrated was the only sports magazine, I guess, at the time, and the fact that I was on the cover, I thought that was cool. I didn't realize that, it's not easy to get on this cover of Sports Illustrated, and so they did a great article. They came out and visited my folks, and it was basically after we lost to Mexico in '62 down there, where I played pretty poorly and actually served 22 double faults in 5 sets, and lost to Osuna and Palafox, and so I got blamed for the loss. But then we beat them in L.A. the next year, and in '63, and so they did a great story on, and I was really kind of too young to recognize how cool that was, and I appreciate it now, I can tell you. But it was pretty neat.
Yes, I bet. Dennis, we're coming up on a break, so just one quick question before we go on break. Going back to doubles, you were able to partner with Arthur Ashe and Billie Jean King. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to play with Billie Jean at Wimbledon, and we came close to winning the mixed, and I played with Arthur a lot. When I was coach of the Davis Cup team, I couldn't play for the team, but Arthur and I played Stan Smith and Bob Lutz all the time, and we just tuned them every time we played them. So Arthur and I were a really, really good team, and we should have won Wimbledon in 1971 or 2, I think, 71.
That is great. I bet great memories for you. We are coming up on a break, so everybody hold on. We'll be back with Dennis Ralston right after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, this is Jeff Salzenstein, former top 100 ATP singles and doubles player, 2-time Stanford All-American, and high-performance coach. You're about to discover how to dramatically improve your tennis fitness level so that you can play your best tennis ever. You see, this program is a 12-week guide where you'll be taken by the hand and shown exactly how to get super strong and mobile so that you can easily feel more stable, prevent injuries, move more efficiently on the court, have more endurance, and add more effortless power to your game. I want you to know that just like all of my other courses, you'll get a full 100% money-back guarantee on strength and mobility for tennis if you're not completely satisfied. I'll give you a full year to keep the program, and if you're not completely satisfied, I'm going to refund every penny.
Go to jeffsalzensteintennis.com to take your tennis to the next level.
Their advertisements make it seem like they love animals, but in reality, they tortured animals for decades. They tested cigarettes on monkeys, rabbits, and dogs. In one study, they strapped dogs down and cut their throats open to permanently install a tube that forced the dogs to smoke cigarettes. This filled their bodies with tar that caused some of the dogs to develop cancer, bronchitis, and pulmonary emphysema. But it gets worse. In the late 60s, they were running smoking experiments with rabbits and mice where the animals were developing emphysema. Hundreds of rabbits and mice died. Any normal company would have had a massive recall. But what did they do? They fired the scientists, buried the findings, and shut down the study. Then they continued to deny smoking caused any health problems for decades. So you want to know why I'm smoke-free? Because I'm not okay with hurting dogs to test tobacco products. That's why. Learn more at whydoyouthink.com. That's the letter whydoyouthink.com.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
My girlfriend has given me a pet name.
I'm afraid to ask.
Snuggle Muffin.
No, it isn't.
And she uses it in public.
Okay, so give your girlfriend a pet name she'll hate, like Thunder Chunky.
I couldn't do that.
I see. Too harsh for Snuggle Muffin. Okay. Drown her out with a 200-mile-per-hour cordless leaf blower.
Got it. Here she comes.
Hey, Snuggle Muffin. What are you doing, Snuggle? Snuggle. I am so out of here.
Wait. Come back, Thunder Chunky.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Hi, this is Rick Macy, and you're listening to the Pro 10 Radio Network. Catch me live on the Coach's Corner, Friday, May 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Welcome back to the Players Lounge on the Pro 10 Radio Network. We are talking with legendary Dennis Ralston. Dennis, can you still hear me? Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, fantastic. I couldn't hear anything. I got scared there for a bit. Dennis, you also faced Nastasi and Tiriac in winning Roland Garros in 1966. What do you recall about that run and your opponents in that final?
Well, in 1966, I was playing with Clark Grabner, who was an excellent doubles player and a very fine singles player, quite a bit younger than I am, but was. And 1966 was the year I got to the finals of Wimbledon, so I'd been over in Europe playing on the clay and preparation, trying to get ready to play well at Wimbledon. And I actually played pretty well at the French and in singles, but I had some blisters in the quarters and I lost. But Clark and I were, Nastasi was sort of on the rise. He was sort of a guy that everybody thought was really talented and had all the shots, and nobody really knew that he was the kind of guy he turned out to be, kind of like a crazy guy at times. I mean, he was so talented, but Tiriac, on the other hand, was a guy that played hockey for the Romanian World Cup team and used to get $100 for choosing for taking a wine glass and chewing it up. It had to be a fine wine glass, though, but he'd chew it up and for $100, and he looked like Dracula. He was from Transylvania and a very accomplished player, but not a guy that I really liked very much. And so, I remember that Clark and I were playing well, and we just, said we're not going to deal with who we're playing. We're going to play the ball, and we just did, and we just cleaned their clocks. And probably one of the most satisfying victories I've ever had, because I'm not a big fan of Tiriac.
That's it. Wow, chewing glass and playing ice hockey and also tennis. That's some talent there, and obviously he's doing extremely well financially and running the Madrid Masters as well. So, Dennis, was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on your time coaching Chris Evert.
Sure. I coached Chrissy from 81 to 87, and got into working with Chrissy because I was coaching her husband, John Lloyd. And so one day John said Chrissy wanted to know if she could come out and work out with us, and I said, sure, that would be great. And at the time I was coaching Brian Gottfried and Harold Solomon and Roscoe Tanner, and so Chrissy came out, and she worked harder than all the guys put together, and so it just kind of worked out that, you know, she said, would you like to travel some with me and help me? And I said I would. And so we had 7 years of traveling and you know, working out, and it was an interesting period. You know, her personal life was tough because she ended up splitting with John, and so that was part of it. I mean, you know, everybody thinks that the tennis players just go out and play tennis, but they live lives just like we all do, and so it was a tough time for Chrissy. And I guess probably the most important thing that I realized with Chrissy was that she's a really good athlete. A lot of people didn't give her credit for that. She's a heck of an athlete, and she probably worked harder than anybody and had a better professional attitude about the game than all the men that I've coached. And I've coached a lot of different players, but it was fun. I mean, she worked hard. I'd say, okay, we're done, and she said, no, I want to do more. You know, it was great to have somebody that's saying, I want to do more, because most of the time the player says you say that's enough, and they say, oh, thank you, and that's good. But Chrissy was a much better athlete than most people give her credit for, and she adjusted to Martina's game. She learned some new shots. She got in better shape. She had lost to Martina 13 times in a row at one stage. I was really considering bagging it and giving it up, but she kept with it. She learned how to hit a topspin lob. She learned to come in. She learned to volley. And after that 13-0 run, she was basically 50% with Martina from that time on. So, you know, I have nothing but good things to say about Chrissy.
Thank you so much for that insight. That's really great to know, Dennis. And you know, you mentioned a couple of times Roscoe Tanner, and I talk with some of my friends who are older who've played college tennis who are from Southern California. And my question to them would be, okay, if we take away the technology today, you know, who back in the day had the really big serve? And everybody's answer was Roscoe Tanner. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the time that you spent coaching Roscoe.
Yes. Well, Roscoe had kind of a unique motion, as you know, anybody that knows tennis. He hit the ball on the way up, and he had a PDP, which is a racket, that was one of the first metal rackets, and Roscoe could hit that serve, you know, 125, you know, and you know, he could place it really well. It was hard to read. I mean, McEnroe's serve, very hard to read as well, but not nearly as powerful as Tanner's. And you know, I hate to think of how fast Tanner would serve it now with equipment now, but I got to say the best serve I've ever seen, in bar none, is Big Poncho. And you know, you can imagine Poncho serving one of these rackets today. Those days he hit it 120 with a wooden racket, and he could hit anything he wanted, anywhere he wanted. So I get asked that question, well, you know, who's the best and all this, who's the greatest player you've ever seen? And you know, there are a lot of great players, and of course the eras changed, the equipment changed, the coaches changed. They got nutritionists, they got masseurs traveling with them. I mean, Poncho played night after night, didn't have anybody helping him. And to me, the best player that I've ever seen play, if I had to have one guy play for my life, it would be Big Poncho.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that.
Hey, you know, Dennis, there's a question from a coaching perspective. I coach on the circuit, up-and-coming players from the ITF circuit, and there's challenges as far as the players. Can you talk about some of the challenges you had from a coach's perspective as far as if you had to teach them a new technique or maybe a new strategy, or some of the challenges you had from coaching some of the players, the many players that you've coached.
Well, I think I was lucky in that I had pretty established players, and you know, I think I learned a lot from my own experiences and where I, you know, failed or I didn't, you know, do the things I should have done. I kind of could push through and tell these guys, look, you know, you're close, but you want to make the next step. This is what you got to do. And I think one of the problems with everybody's talking about what's the matter with American tennis and our players. I think one of the problems is that our guys seem to be content or happy with getting to the quarters or the 16s or whatever. I want a guy that wants to be the number one player in the world. That's who I want to coach. I want a guy that says I'm going to be the best. And obviously there's only one spot for that, you know, that position, but I want a guy that wants it or a gal that says, I want to be number one. I want to win Wimbledon. I don't want somebody that says I want to get to the quarters and make a lot of money. And, you know, and that's not wrong saying that people might think that, but for me as a coach, I was lucky enough to have guys that were right there at the top. I had Chris Everett, I had Gabriela Sabatini, and, you know, I had Noah, and, you know, bringing him back. And those guys, you know, they wanted to win, and they wanted to be the number one player. And so, you know, my thought is when I read all this stuff and I hear it about our American players, I want those guys, I want John Isner saying, hey, I don't want to be a semifinalist. I want to win these majors. I want to do the things I need to do. And that's too bad that, you know, maybe he does say that, but I don't see it. I don't see any of those guys playing Madrid. I don't see any of them playing, you know, the Clays, and maybe they played Rome, but that's it. And you know, if I were running American tennis, I'd have every good American playing every major clay court tournament over there and qualifying and trying to qualify and training, and then they're going to learn to play on all the surfaces. And you know, Wimbledon is a different story now because the grass is sort of like cement now. But just my personal opinion of don't settle for just being a good player. Go for the top.
You know, it's ironic. It's funny that you say that. We get a lot of players here at the academy, and they all want to go pro. And I always ask them, "What's your goal?" And one of the first things they say is, "Well, I want to be the best I can be." And I say, "No, wait. Well, what's the ultimate goal?" And they say, "Well, if I could be top 100." And they never really come out and say, I don't know if they're afraid of saying, "Oh, I'll be number one in the world," or like you said, they're just happy with just being top 50 or top 20. But you're right. Having that player come to you and say, "I want to be number one." And to this day, the only player I've met so far that I've worked with kind of personally is Monica Puig, that said, first thing I asked her, I said, "What do you want to do?" She said, "I want to be number one in the world." And that's just my ultimate goal. She wasn't afraid of it. And with the right coaching, I think she'll get there. So thank you so much for that. You know, what was that?
Good for you. I think that's good. You want that kind of player.
You want that kind of player, yeah. She's out there now. She's battling, and I think with that kind of attitude, she'll make it. And, you know, it's funny that you brought up Isner. Isner comes up a lot in our talks. We do a show called Passing Shots, and it comes up a lot that he's just very nonchalant about his game. He's 8th in the world. I think he's pretty content with 8. Pete, you had a couple of thoughts on Isner in the past with your experiences in the press room with him.
I did, Dennis. I cover Cincinnati every year, and first off, he said you know, he wouldn't be where he is and if he didn't go to the University of Georgia for 4 years. But he also, you know, interestingly enough, he got to the final of Cincy a couple of years ago, and both Rafael Nadal and Juan Martín del Potro said, you know, this guy's got probably the best serve on tour. We don't want any part of this guy. We don't want to play this guy. We don't like seeing his name in the draw. And yet, you know, John Isner, you know, I believe thinks that tennis is a hobby for him. He'd much rather watch NFL football or even wrestling, and obviously isn't the same person when he's outside the United States. It's amazing. So many people would give to have his talent, and yet Yeah, he doesn't play Monte Carlo every year, and just the clay court season is throwaway for him, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I think Isner did develop at the University of Georgia. I think that college tennis is a great training ground for our American players, and I think a lot of guys turn pro way too soon. I think Jack Sock's a good example. I think if he'd have proved that he could be the number one collegiate player, I mean, he's a good player, no doubt about it, but he might have been a lot better a lot sooner, and maybe he'll develop. I don't know, but Isner, to me, with that serve, should be a threat to win Wimbledon every year, but he can't return serve. So, and he doesn't attack. He tries to hit winners on every return. I could help that guy win Wimbledon, but that's not going to happen because I'm ancient history, I guess. But I played over 100 matches at Wimbledon, so I know kind of how to play on grass and just alone at Wimbledon. But I'm not saying that he's wrong for being content with being 8 in the world. That's a heck of an accomplishment, no doubt about it. But
it is.
If I'm coaching somebody, I want them, and I guess this kind of goes back to the way I thought. I thought I'd win every tournament I played. I didn't, obviously, but I thought I could win every tournament that I played, every match. I went into every match thinking I could win. And, yes, I certainly didn't win every match, but, you got to think you're going to win. You got to think you can win if you're going to be good. And so I think, I never was satisfied with just getting to the quarters. I mean, I beat Laver at Forest Hills in '69. I beat him 10-8 in the fifth in front of 10,000 people. And, I drove the subway back to the hotel, and everybody was congratulating me, and I was thinking, how cool. And then, like an idiot, I read the papers the next day, and then the next day, I had to play the next day, and I went out and lost to Cliff Ritchie on grass. And Cliff Ritchie was a good player on clay, but not a guy I should lose to on grass. And, so, I kind of, that's another thing I learned. You win a big match, and you think, cool, but then you got to go out and do it again the next day. And that's a thing that Isner, I think, needs to follow and really want to win a major. And maybe he will never win a major, but if he doesn't believe he can do it, he's certainly not going to. It's not going to happen.
Sure, interesting. I'd love to see what you'd be able to do with John Isner, especially at Wimbledon, Dennis. But you did mention a couple of other big names that you've worked with in the past. I'm wondering if you could talk about some of the time you spent with Gabriela Sabatini as well as Noah.
Well, I worked with Sabatini kind of when she was really struggling, and she'd had a number of different coaches, and we started at Key Biscayne, and I didn't know Gabby. I kind of obviously watched her, and so we started at Key Biscayne, and she was out of shape, and we worked hard. We got her in shape. She played the circuit, and we went to Rome, and she got to the finals at Rome, and lost a match to Sanchez Vicario that was a good match, and got to the finals. And then she got to the finals with German, and then lost to Steffi Graf 6-4 in the third in another good match. Then we went to Paris, and I really thought she was playing well, and she was. And she played Mary Jo Fernandez in the quarters, and she demolished everybody to get to the quarters, and she was up a set 4-1 against Fernandez. And then Mary Jo just started swinging from the heels, and I was sitting with Harold Solomon, who was a guy I'd coached and was one of my guys on my Davis Cup teams, and Harold was coaching Mary Jo, and I said, Mary Jo hit 2 balls at 4-1 on the line, just swinging from the heels. I said, Harold, this match isn't over yet. And sure enough, it wasn't. And 10-8 in the third, after maybe one of the best matches, Gabby lost to Mary Jo Fernandez. She had 5 match points and lost. And basically that was the end of her career. She just never rebounded, and she just kind of tanked after that at Wimbledon and basically said that's enough. And you often think about one point, what a difference a match point can make in a career. But I enjoyed working with Gabby, and Noah was even more fun because he was kind of crazy, and the press in France kind of put it down as the odd couple, Noah and Ralston. Noah was kind of the flamboyant, singer, musician, loved life, and I was the more conservative, laid-back, old guard Californian, but we had a good time, and we did well until he got to the semis in the French and in the Australian, and he had beaten Lendl 2 weeks earlier at Sydney, and I thought he had a great chance to win this thing, and he goes out against Lendl in the semis of the Australian, gets a bad call at the third point, and went berserk, and I'd never seen him go berserk. And later I find out that he'd had an issue with his girlfriend, and all those other things that most people don't know enter into a player's life, and basically just said, that's it. And from that point on, he was basically gave up worrying about playing. And so I bought him from like 88 in the world to like 17, and I had a big bonus if he wins this match in the Australian. I remember I wrote my own contract, and I had $100,000 bonus if he wins this match. So I remember it real well. And when he went berserk on the third point, I thought, uh-oh. And sure enough, he just basically rolled over, and Lendl won in 3 straight. So, interesting things as a coach.
Indeed. Yeah. Thank you kindly for all that insight and analysis, Dennis. And we're going to go to break now. When we come back from break, we're going to talk a little bit about some of your coaching in Davis Cup as a coach as well as playing. And we'll be back with Dennis Ralston right after this.
Hey, Thirst, can I try out a few Coke Summer sound effects on you? Cool. You okay with this? And this? And what about this? Gotcha there, Thirst. That wasn't sound effects. That was a Coke. I'm no longer thirsty. You're so out of here. Coca-Cola. Open happiness.
What is this bill for $562? Let me call these people.
Thanks for calling Big Tobacco. How can I be of assistance?
Hi, I was going through my mail and saw this bill saying I owe $562 for smoking-related expenses.
That's correct, ma'am.
Yeah, what's the deal with this bill?
You see, smokers miss more work and retire earlier, which costs Nevadans $903 million in lost productivity per year. Also, smokers get sick with diseases like lung cancer and emphysema, costing another $565 million in medical expenses. So, when you add it up and divide by a total number of Nevadans, it comes out to $562 per Nevada household.
Okay, but I don't smoke.
Whether you smoke or not, every Nevadan pays the bill.
You know what? I'm not paying this bill.
Actually, you already did. And you'll be making the same payment again next year. Well, thank you for your call.
Hello? Is smoking worth it? Learn more at smokefreevegas.com. That's smokefreevegas.com. Or for free help quitting smoking, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. That's 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
Made possible by funding from the Department of Health and Human Services.
Little Caesars, home of the $5 hot and ready pepperoni pizza, now has a deep, deep dish pizza with 8 crispy caramelized corner slices and even more cheese and pepperoni. So head on down and grab a large for just $8 and tell them Alan Varner sent you. They won't know who that is, but as a voice actor, I'm always trying to get my name out there. Check me out at alandoesvoices.com. That's ALAN doesvoices.com. But first, get the new deep, deep dish pizza. It's hot and ready every day from 4 to 8 p.m. for just $8, only at Little Caesars.
Pizza.
At participating locations plus tax.
To celebrate the not normal Mini Cooper, we hired an expert to tell you about Mini telepathically.
Greetings. Relax and listen to my mind. The Mini Cooper hardtop comes with 37 mpg and Go-Kart handling.
Wait, that's not telepathy.
Listen again. The bigger 4-door Mini Countryman has seating for 5.
Okay, you're just whispering.
You're still paying me for this.
Come see the 37 mpg Mini Cooper hardtop and the bigger Mini Countryman today. Visit miniusa.com/info for MPG details.
Hi, this is John Embry, and you're listening to the Pro 10 Radio Network. Catch me live on Wednesday, May 28th at 1 o'clock Pacific.
And we're back for the final segment of the Players Lounge presented by Pro 10 Global Sports. Talking with Dennis Ralston. Dennis, sticking with coaching, you coached the USA to 5 consecutive Davis Cup championships from 68 to 72. Such a great feat. Congratulations on that achievement. Anything in particular that stands out from that time?
Well, I was coach from 68, 69, 70, and 71, and it was a great team that we had. Arthur Ashe and Stan Smith and Bob Lutz, and then in 72 I was appointed to be the captain of the team, and that was probably the most kind of memorable experience in my tennis career, is the fact that we won the Davis Cup in 72 in Bucharest in October, actually November, I think. We're the only team to never play a match at home and win the Davis Cup. And the USTA, in their infinite wisdom, in 1972, we played the Commonwealth Caribbean in Jamaica. We played Mexico in Mexico City. We played Chile in Santiago, and we played Spain in Barcelona. And after the fourth match, we had earned home court advantage. But in 72, they changed the format of the Davis Cup. So prior to that, the challenging team would play the current winner. And so we won 68, 69, 70, and 71. And so the format would have been that we have home court because we were the champion nation. Well, 72, they put everybody in the tournament. So they changed the format, but we still earned the right to play Romania in the U.S., but the USTA, because my friend Mr. Tiriac complained to the USTA and said that, well, we played the U.S. the last 2 years in Charlotte and Cleveland, and even though the format was different, the USTA, I guess, felt that they thought it would be cool for us to go to Romania. Well, in 72, the Black September hit the Munich Olympics, and everybody knows what happened there. And we also had 2 Jewish boys on our team, Harold Solomon and Brian Gottfried, and so we got a threat from the Black September that they were going to hit the American team in Bucharest. And when I heard that we were going to Bucharest at the U.S. Open, or actually Forest Hill, the U.S. Championships, I had a meeting with my team, and somebody said, well, you're going to Bucharest to play the finals. Our team said, are you kidding? We're not going to Bucharest. Australia, I talked to their captain, Neil Fraser, and he said, don't even bother to go. They lie, they cheat, they have linesmen, you have no chance. With that little caveat, we ended up having a team meeting deciding that either we boycotted and didn't go or we went. So we decided to go. And probably it was the greatest win in Davis Cup history, not because I was involved, but because it happened in Bucharest. And they did have meetings with the linesmen before the matches, how they were going to cheat us. And Tiriac orchestrated the crowd. And Nastasi, fortunately, played like he didn't know how to play, I guess. Smith beat the heck out of him in the first match. But it was an amazing, amazing match. We never stopped at a traffic light in 10 days. We had the top Secret Service guys of Ceausescu guarding us. We couldn't go out of our hotel. They built a special stadium, had security all over the place. So it was one of the most amazing wins in any tennis, any sports history, I think. And so I was, I never thought we'd win. I actually thought we'd win when we won the first match. Smith beat Nastasi. And then Tiriac stole the match from Gorman. And then Tiriac and Nastasi had beaten Van Dillen and Smith the year earlier, tuned Van Dillen, made a fool of him. And Van Dillen had a nightmare he told me about before the match. And he said, Coach, I have this nightmare. I go up to Tiriac and we're arguing, and I take my racket, which is Spalding Smasher, and I just go whoosh, and there goes his head rolling down the court. And I thought, gee, can I play this young guy in front of 10,000 screaming Romanians? And I seriously considered not playing him and putting Gorman with Smith, but I decided to go with the established team, and Van Dalen played the match of his life, and they beat Tiriac and Nastasi in 3 straight. So I thought after 2-1 for us that we had a pretty good shot at winning. And then the match with Smith and Tiriac started, and I remember sitting there at 2 sets all, love 40 in the 5th, Smith serving. I figured we were done. And then Smith, did something that is beyond belief. He served with, just to tell you how the Romanians wanted to change balls. They wanted to change balls on 25 and 27. And the captains have a meeting before the match starts and talking about when they're going to change balls. And so I said, I want to change balls on 3 and 5 because we were playing on a very slow court that they were watering down. So they wanted to change 25 and 27. I said 3 and 5. And we ended up playing at Wimbledon rules 7 and 9. But this was the balls were like balloons because the courts were wet. And Smith was down love 40 after losing the 4-set 6-1, and he served 3 aces and 2 unreturnable serves to win that first game of the 5th set and just broke the spirit of Tiriac. And we ended up winning that match 6-love in the 5th. And the amazing thing was that I picked Gorman to play ahead of Solomon. And, of course, as the great coach that I was, I did not realize that Gorman had lost 17 straight times to Nastasi. 17. Gorman told me that, which was nice of him. And then he made it 18 by losing the match that didn't matter after we'd won. So, yeah, I remember that Davis Cup match very clearly, and it's probably, I guess if you have to say there's a highlight to my career was being a part of that team to win.
Congratulations for all of your efforts and again for getting the team to go and actually participate and win. What an experience. And, some of our other guests who have played Davis Cup matches, you yourself said you double faulted 22, 25 times. Other guests have said that as well. A road tie and just the double faults are in the high double digits. So, great effort for the U.S. team in 72. And thank you, Coach, for your efforts there. And talking a little bit more, you were elected to the International Tennis Hall of Fame in 1987. If you could talk a little bit about what that wonderful recognition means to you.
I sure can. I think, obviously, in any sport that you're involved in, to be in any Hall of Fame is an honor, and I'm very, I guess, to be included with all those great players. It's an amazing experience, and the Hall of Fame in tennis, the International Tennis Hall of Fame, I guess, is the highest honor you can get. So to be recognized that I belong with, some of those great players that I admired, and like Jack Kramer and Tilden and all those greats that I know about. I know all the top guys, Nadal, Federer, all those guys, Djokovic, they'll be there, and the Williams sisters, and eventually. But it was probably the highest honor I'd ever received, and I'm proud to be a part of that great core of tennis players.
Congratulations. And just a couple of months ago here in Surprise, Arizona, which is west of us, Jim Courier's Power Share Series is played, and Todd Martin was one of the players. And as you well know, Dennis, Todd is now the CEO of the Hall of Fame, as well as going to be the director of the 250 tournament in Newport. And he was asked quite a bit here when he was in Arizona about his new role with the International Tennis Hall of Fame. And one of the things he said over and over again was, it's his goal, it's his mission to invite a lot of the inductees back year and year again and again, because there's not enough current members that come to the event. And so Todd Martin's going to really make sure that everyone is more than welcome and included in those ceremonies going forward.
Well, I think it's a great choice. He's a smart young guy and a great player, and I think it's important in our sport that former players get involved and it's a great choice, and I think he's going to do a great job. And I hope he invites me back.
Yeah, I agree completely. Well, I think we don't hear Alex on the air right now. I'm going to go to the next question. I think we've lost Alex's audio there for a second. Coach, what was your toughest opponent that when you ever played, and why was that, please?
My toughest opponent, wow. I guess I had different tough opponents, as I grew up in the game. My original toughest opponent was Bill Bond from La Jolla. And then probably there's a guy from Arizona named Bill Lenore who was really good, real strong baseline player. He was tough. I moved up to the majors. Emerson was a tough guy for me to play. I had good results, for him against him, but I always knew he was going to be the fittest guy I was going to play. Laver was tough. What a great player Laver was, obviously, and I played Lou Hode once, and this was way beyond when he was playing his best. But for a given match, Lou Hode was probably one of the most incredible athletes and players I've ever played. I played McEnroe and Fleming in doubles, and I certainly respect McEnroe's talent, and he was a great player. I don't particularly like the guy, but he was a great player. Let's see, who else? Of the top guys that I played, I never played against Sampras. I certainly, recognize what a great server and player he was, and I didn't play Curry or any of those guys. But probably the toughest guy, Pancho Segura, who maybe most people don't know, is probably the best player that nobody knows how good he was. Pancho Segura was so close to being the number one guy in the world. The only problem was he played Big Pancho, and Big Pancho had a little bit bigger serve, maybe a lot bigger serve, but Pancho Segura was incredibly good, and I didn't like playing him. I only had to play him a couple of times because he was way older than I was. So, every kind of era that I played, I'd always find somebody that gave me a lot of problems.
That is great. I'm actually back. My audio was off for a little bit, but I didn't go anywhere. Dennis, I saw that you wrote a book called Dennis Ralston's Tennis Workbook. Can you tell us how that came about?
Yeah, I wrote two books actually a long time ago, but the workbook was kind of like when I played, I used to make notes on everything that I did, and so I kind of came up with an idea to give serious players a kind of like a blueprint of what to do. And what I've learned from teaching a lot is that, a lot of people have good intentions and they're going to try it. It's just kind of like a diet. You get on it for a week and then boom, it's gone. You forget it. And the same thing with tennis. And it was basically, a series of programs and drills and stuff to do to get better. And it's like anything. It's hard to follow and stick with it. So, but it was fun. I enjoyed it, and basically I haven't changed a lot of my thoughts on the game. Obviously, the game is a little bit different now with all the top spin and everybody staying so far back and stuff. But for most players, including the club players, it's a lot easier to play the more kind of conventional game that we played rather than sitting 10 feet behind the baseline and drilling ground strokes. And so I think it's relevant, but I wrote it 20 years ago, so I sold 4,000 copies, and that's all they made.
That's great. Dennis, can you share with us what you're doing now?
Yes, I'm living in Austin, Texas. I'm working at a club, Grey Rock. I teach. I'm coaching a wheelchair player from Chile. She's 12 in the world. Her name's Francesca Maradones. I'm working with 3-0 teams, 3-5 teams. I'm working with some players that play the national 60s and 55s, and I'm playing a little bit. I had an amputation in 2010 from an infection in the foot operation, and so I'm learning to get around, a little bit slower, but I'm still playing, and I'm still enjoying the game. I follow it, and particularly follow FC winning again, which is great, the NCAA. But
yes,
that's pretty much what I'm doing. And I kind of went through a period where I was messed up with prescription drugs. Ironically, I was watching today on ESPN about all the NFL guys getting messed up with that stuff, and I got messed up with it and got addicted to some serious pain meds, and that basically ruined my life for about 10 years. And I went to Betty Ford and got off the stuff, and so, I'm just thankful I'm able to get around and do things again, and, it's all part of the journey we take.
It is, and thank you so much for sharing that. It's so important for people to know that stuff can happen if you're not careful, and I read part of that story on an interview you gave, and it was inspiring to see that you went through it for 10 years, but you got through it with the support of your family and your wife, and now you're here sharing this great information with us, all the great stories. So thank God that you were able to get through that.
Yeah, I'm blessed that I'm still here, because I was on, and they were talking about 15 milligrams of stuff. I was on 80 milligram pills, and the last prescription I had was 12 a day of OxyContin, which
oh my goodness,
basically is scary stuff. And so anybody that might be listening, if you're messing up with that stuff, I mean, if I had somebody tell me what it can do to you, I had 2 doctors tell me I'm going to be on that stuff the rest of my life. And because I had knee pain, I had 16 operations after playing, and so I didn't pay attention. I listened to them. I thought they were right, but I didn't really explore it. So, I just tell people now, look, the longest you take that stuff is a week, and I graduated from 5 milligrams to 10, ending up with 80 milligrams, 12 a day. I took 6 at the max, but I was taking Adderall, I was taking OxyContin, and basically my life was gone, and I didn't know it. And my family saved me, and the Betty Ford, I went to Betty Ford and got off of it, and boy, I'm thankful. And any chance I get, I speak about it, because it's a evil thing, and it's kind of like deceptive. You think you're feeling better, and all of a sudden you're hooked on this stuff. So I empathize with those football players I watched today.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing that. So important. And we're coming up to the end of the show, Dennis. We really appreciate your time. We have one last question for you. What advice do you have for parents of up-and-coming juniors on their decision to either go to college or to consider a professional career?
Well, that's a great question, because I'm very strong in my feelings about that. I think the college format, hopefully they won't change the scoring system like they're talking about doing, but I think the college format is a great proving grounds. If you can be the number 1 or number 2 or one of the top 5 college players, then you got a shot at making it on the pro tour. No one's done a study on the guys that turn pro way too soon and what happens to them afterwards. They take the guys that make it. So if you're winning tournaments as a junior, men's tournaments, yeah, maybe you go pro, but you got to really have the credentials, and there are a lot of people trying to take those few spots. So go to college, get an education so you can do something else if you don't make it. You get hurt, you're dead if you don't have that. So my advice to parents is, don't think about the money right away. Think about what happens if they don't make it. And hopefully they'll, pay attention and go to college.
Absolutely. Thank you for great advice. I hope parents are listening to taking some notes. As a coach, you run a lot across the parents that are seeing the big picture at the very end, but they don't take the time to take a look at everything they need to consider. Dennis, before we go off the air here, anything else you want to add for our listeners?
No, I'm glad you're doing the show, and you're getting guys like Dick Gould and John Embry, and that's great for tennis, and anything I can do to help the great game grow, I want to do it. So appreciate you guys doing the work.
And we appreciate you. We need people like you coming on board and letting us know how we got to this point, all the sacrifices you guys have made and brought the game to this level. So we definitely appreciate your time and wish you the best. Please say hi to everybody out there, and hopefully we'll have you on the show again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Dennis.
Bye.
Yes, that was Dennis Ralston on the show. I want to remind everybody that tomorrow afternoon, we have Rick Macy on the show at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern Time. Next week, we kick it off with Bobby Blair, author of Hiding Inside the Baseline. And in the same show, we're talking with Jan Ozu from FifthSet.com. In the second part of our doubleheader, you will hear Passing Shots with Pete Zebron, and his guest host will be Jan Ozu. The CEO and Executive Director of the USPTA, John Embry, will join us Wednesday afternoon, and we're going to finalize the week with Dr. Ann Smith on Thursday night. This has been another edition of the Players Lounge on the Pro 10 Radio Network. For Dennis Ralston and Pete Zebron, I am Alex Ramirez, signing off. Have a good night, and God bless.
That's all, folks.